talngim oh you نرور البلولة لمبلتي قرين الملك كرم رمضا أرملك بلوى
yung total marakulad ay nung malkora makita yang de kadokora di lutan megis emera show malway say mkora malmali rohi give ibam update tegel ko koram le happen rekal mlamom medical month ngal special guest el alto tawa ko koram o ay cycle el kora baby exciting lurio el bodorura center engang Clela Dan or full name niya Daniel CASSIDY engang aquarium researcher L'Oriol Bontria at aquarium el osigate al wasig makaradorio el malmol magagid el rele o sindra time betos pagagid the mudas ngora applied research el domes sa baby research el mirura baby pasyo sabe el malme ko mes el wasig makarang adorul المؤثر بالوعد ملؤوب مؤثر environmental كده كوك ngani ngaray gel ko kora sa beed el remol mo ko kora unique kay kita lamsub el merbela we magara relevant el mera abalwad ma el alto taw era bado mo ora shorigi de bado ngdo uradan yaktimo update gel ko ramle happen gel ko to era outreach and education center gi de gan na mo medical 2 weeks or the past month since our last show. Asira last 2 weeks ago asa pamle host mang naringa show ing elto si silta mang mil nga lakala educational carnival center educational carnival sel bekal rara tembela anniversary gid ngaringi segi dal ko 3-day event the host ng ilabantrang ra school el mamsada el activity malubong real relevant el mora center madiri relevant el issues el sa pedra mesra al selvelar el all time mang ngora dim la kamal al update el gilel say maktimo give a brief update mang mula sa bae el magalorior lavantry are 12 schools el 11 ringia elementary school imong ringia one high school saygi del mle February 23 kamang January 23 el saygi del week ang mle start carnival accommodate tiki del school marangal kal ni sign up el May manggimal happy lo ay sala sem no sa del reach out to more than 700 students within 3 days which is 200 more than last year's students the mesertira last year magimal di sa mamal ngote ale orang asulit trigger ko school mo sa il participate to kunitigal school el marapabaldab el nasabel participate el year kumam sulang al malngal aroy de continued support our la center continued malmol may gagid el activity throughout the year dire al saygi del time may gimle launcher sel or gimle unveil or sel el BSL theme el gida la calendar gida next year mel atel mal February or time mal 2025 calendar theme gida mo exploring our sanctuary magimlo oti a video lo o ay sa ay kel ko ragim expect la school was tegi da theme gid masel mral melgi tel calendar gid ang kuramo nga tele legal el artworks lang nga alsel ma el alto taw gimal di may ko ay sagel ko kuryo lorular at aquarium letal ayum aquarium el altama dili kal nga outreach department tra center give mga ringi sel ko to outreach and education mga ringi ko to aquarium etal aquarium dili kal dos peningil wasing educational tool dal sal wasing dos peningil accommodate tourist malubta atarang البلو me visit travel what mding saygid Tobasel was those pengil dongu lo sa kanang school may gero ko il shasing ma look lang al sel may kel aquarium ma arm may galbek badang marine environment sa makara those pelo sa akra ng galbela ng school el melding el gilal tel club el balwader bela may gero ko lang al sel so ngalakya ka nga malakot ko lang apart mag ngaldi ayama yung selbalong at ado mo malakot ko lang apart and this el bol mare kal cooks mo di tara part ringi yak mo oil ko ta bengi Marcel di meret ma akmang utar ko yung mamsang mo ko start el mother take el project el tira ko on do sa mo ringi ra el admiral melo ng el boil. So good morning Dan, welcome to the show. I know you've been here before, but maybe before you start just be free kind of explain or introduce yourself and your role at the Palau Aquarium, and then just dive right into the project.
Morning, and thanks for having me. My name's Daniel Cassidy, and I'm the aquarium researcher at PICRC. Today, I'm going to be talking about a project we'll be involved in the coming 3 years. The short name is CORDAP, and the long name is Coral Accelerator Program. And so, this project relates to how well corals can adapt to a changing world. So, as we know, going forward, climate change is here, it's among us. It's causing hotter waters and it's causing more and more severe weather events. So what does this mean for corals? Well, if the water's too hot, we know that corals bleach. That's when they lose their algae inside and we're just left with the soft tissue and the white skeleton of the coral. And if they can't gain that algae back, they will eventually die. So what we know is that some corals are more tolerant to this heat than others. And so this really highlights a need for active reef management going forward as we're expecting the seas to become more and more hot and more unpredictable. Would you like to break up and translate, or shall I just go all the way?
I'll do a little bit explanation. الدانا أو أي سلوسة تاع البروجكت التايم البضروري كوردا بانكل الكوردا بروجكت es el والغمالن كلا واسي Coral Accelerated Program ما تاد بروجكت ضمسرين دايتن مو أمورا أغني البويل العراق مو ملمول من هذا العراق مو ngil 3 years mga sangaraul makadamrur talom suba wasagadaraul madangali isa la climate change ma global warming blul adamral mo magyal selbol magyal da el tela blul adeng diri gal seben ngod iya kal dalila da mangal mo magyal selbol material da marinha event del modern wasing coral bleaching sel bol se ramran del dibol belele rogi malubang ngaringa others del gibringin mo belele ulengagi del alchi malubang gigi del armel amran del ngar al salamran mo omis mang mo da sa belang kal maran del mangkagi del armel amran del gausi spe mang walbol se amran del mong di mo belelewe eg madamran sige del coral bleaching un mong morngi balkulak mong kaldala da maluba temperature da ba amla mo makayal malub mo mo da al atter sel el kirel التنغران كليل الكل دليل عذاب السرفايفر نيامراند ما أقول ما يقال مراندا مسمئري ماذ ما الآي قال بنا ممري غدراجي غاريني بك بدين الأم سوبر منا مريني راب الواد المساعدة كجيد الهيت tolerant corals ما الأوبة كجيد المراند السبائل السرفايفر تلقيب المغيال الذاب السلة تلقيب الغمان تلتايم ما التلو مسوب أول غرق أم إلا كجيد البابيرة أم سوب الملا الملاringira before الواسق مغرض ومسك كجيد الهيت tolerant corals غران سبائل المرمول لسال بعض ذنيك mo malwang rab lakar de lele gagi el brand del CBL el survive ratalgi bul makyal del tapom.
Thanks. So as we know, some corals are more heat tolerant than others. One of the huge questions in this project is what drives that change? What about the coral's DNA or the coral's genetic structure actually makes it able to stand those hot waters? And so the way we're going about answering that question is right now we have coral parents which are 5 to 6 years old, and coming this March they will soon be coral grandparents. And so with the parents, the siblings and also the grand siblings, they will go through a series of heat stress experiments to find out how well each of them can deal with a spike in ocean temperature, for example. And beyond that, also genetic analysis will be done to find out which parts of their DNA relate to being able to tolerate those hot waters.
Mangawasay المرال March إذا ما قمص جاي ذا المران ذا already قرام لا start المسوب المقمص الكمو سيل بقى الفولوم اللي جاي ذا المران ذا إنغرال partner cell DNA رني عصب المويو ذا المورنجل النالجال مالوبن جال نالجال جال مران دوسي سو المران من سبق المويو إذا تاجي ذا البلاغر ذا ليل الواسيك سبق اللي الطقورة مغيال ذا الدعب من ذريغ التلان تنين تلام سوبا مؤمس الكمو نقمال نغرال part التال DNA مالوبة كده التشينز را كده المراندا عصبة الرولي أو أول من سبق رولينج المراندا من heat tolerant.
Perfect. So once we know exactly what it is in the coral that makes it able to deal with the heat, then we're able to apply this. So how would we apply that? That would be through something called coral restoration. Maybe you remember last time I was on here I was speaking about the different types of coral restoration. We have passive restoration and active restoration. This would fall under active restoration, and it would be restoration by sexual reproduction of corals. And if at that point when we spawn the corals and we rear them when they're young, we're able to put them through a selection pressure, we call it, which is a very stressful environment where only the strong ones will be able to survive the hot, and we're left with just heat-tolerant corals. That's a process known as assisted evolution. So that will be used to select for corals which we expect to have heat tolerance, which we can then prove with the genetic studies that Singer was just talking about. So applying this to a broad scale, it all sounds good, but we obviously need to know where to look to find these right corals. So one aspect of this project is developing a map which will allow us to find areas where we expect to find heat-tolerant corals. From there, narrowing our search and pulling out the corals to see if it's ground-truthed.
ملانgo ay sala el البعض start المرور تاجي ذا المسوب بعض ذنيل كمونغرال part DNA ruling kay ذا المران من سبق له تقول مغيال الذهب إنه مسكذا بتقول تقال راديول البطورون مملا أو أي سر إمر راديول سبق الممروني أقمن التقول مغذا متجر تاجي ذا part DNA enable نقل قرال من heat tolerant مغاسي وانا يقول راديول سبق الممروني تقول coral restoration mangwase alta kom remembering him leta lamira a show el mem sada tokora coral restoration may galbak pa rin la taletele la a coral restoration mangla say tagi dal ko komsuber el angok magdroir mo sabi eden brusel do magdroir wase ang active restoration el tianga biosphere through sexual reproduction makadaos pera gaygi del ma sperma coral السبق لهم قال لنغاريني أبك بدنجلا السبق هذا المرو لنغاريني قال السبق هذا في مسيب أريل أمران ده ملالم إن فينين ملالم بطاق مالو بقدر سبق كده الناتشورال process الوايس sexual reproduction رامراندم مل ang selba ضرورة ويجي جيد yang walwas قدم so يسبرسد مقدرين لسن assisted evolution لقدم وملاس من لو مقبو أي جيد المران ذا heat resistant or heat tolerant من سبقين ما بطوغ البذنيل أمران ذا الويجي جيد من سبق survive as we continue to experience كجيد ال effects of climate change من مال ومغيال ذا من سلبا ضرورة ويجي جيد the restore جيد الكورالز إن سبق survive تلقي بالمغيال ذا ما ذي رجال وسيطرة تلقي تلوريور أو سيغ دمو متيجا يقال مراندرجير where to look to find these corals but وسيطرة ذي رجال صورين ممرورة mapping ممبيات تلقي ذا أمسرا الأقل أماب بالوسي ومسين دلنغارجير مالو بنغرا تلت لا habitat تل بالأول غارين جيد المراندا.
Yep. So as we know, some corals will be more tolerant to heat than others. In nature, nothing's free, so usually there is a trade-off. So some of the trade-offs we'll be looking at are growth rates, the density of the algae that lives inside the coral, bone density of the coral as well. So just trying to see what, if you are to gain that heat tolerance, are you losing anything that might be important in the process as well. And beyond that, we also have partners from the University of Bolinao in the Philippines. And so as part of that, they'll be doing a similar experiment over there. And the point of comparing Palau to the Philippines would be comparing quite a pristine environment to one that's considered quite polluted, and to see if there's any differences in how the corals behave and take on these new traits in those two different environments. Sure. So the implications for this are mainly in restoration. So if we're artificially building a community of heat-tolerant corals, that's future-proof is the idea, because we know the ocean is getting hotter and hotter. If we're able to reproduce these corals and propagate them in an area, we almost have a bank, a backup of corals that can deal with that heat. So if for some reason a big bleaching event comes, we have a reserve which we can then rely on.
Melang ngoais alwasay ka المران del dosu ba baby that timing kada blo madingal wasay ngaringigel manmsisi they're doing better than others. Ding ngaringi at time kada gila dalo mi cycle ko kora baby talang tingin lagi kita lomsu especially lagi kita lomsu belamran that's adalo mi cycle growth rate tingil wasay so best growth rate tingil wasay ngosisi wa ratela lkurulel or sabi el mere del moklo or ngospera talgi bel klol time el maral moklo el mature ngagi del maranda dere gal omesa agi del qora bebila talang tangila albong agi del bones malubang tal structure amran del mo mga nateletel ematela msuba mal ngangi bebila athel إذا ذاقلوا your partner سرقيت إذا ذاقلوا لقالوا your بتنغريني أنا غرس university وانا university غرا هوريبين إذا ذاقلوا your مرور تلم سوبا من واسطة قوق مرور هذا سيسي والقوق أمسوبا المرايكال المران ذا غرا هوريبين اللي ذي غريني كلورتي اللذ ذا مو مسنا كلاكاروس مالوبن قوق مو كلايسيسي ولا كده المسوب التانغاريني قوق سبئيل السوبي السبئيل القوق شيريني المريكين ما قوق عذاب تريني التانغ موروليا ولا المبيات مالوب قد قوق شركة الضرورة بالوضع المرتين من سبئيل continue to build أكيد الريفس قلب الواد القرى مقمد إن غير سيسي ريتشن so of course هذا trial share أكيد النالج through أكيد البارتنرشيب من سبب in a way قد contribute المرة أصاب أكلها كده البك بدين الأمران ده لعبلو الأذروكي تغنين مرة كده البلو والتلقي بالكميثركي.
And so the main thing that's unique in this project is the fact that we have now 3 generations of cultured corals. That's the first time that's ever been done. And so the importance of that is we're trying to understand how this heat tolerance is passed down from generation to generation. In this way, we have a perfect model to see from the very start, which would be the wild coral, to the first generation, which is the child, and then the grandchild. So in that way, we're able to sample each coral and see how these traits are passed down through those generations and what that means in the context of how the coral acts and behaves in the environment.
ملأng lao ay sala set tagi del project o mes tagi del 3 generation of cultured corals matom lang gagi del wild coral emay e makpo oringin moringan ngalgel elang gagi del waset timbral melongi del boil e gagi del wild coral elang awal bal grandparents matamo o makpo ngalgel ang gagi del child coral mong wablabol 3 generations el sorry Dan, but I just want to make things clear. So you're saying that there are 3 generation cultured corals and we're only starting the project this coming March. So I just want to ask that this is a continued project from previous researchers that visited the center before.
Exactly, that's right. And so for those wild corals in the very first generation, they've already done these heat stress experiments and they know the tolerance of those ones, and so the new ones they'll be spawning, they're mainly focusing on those, but they'll also consider the previous ones at the same time as well.
You go ahead.
I think.
You done?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mungwasay gagi del 3 generation corals ay kaya part talaga lumsubal mlaringi la center telara na memong temla continue musub gagi del wild coral el morning gagi del child coral el wal ngalgel gagi del waseng wild coral gel wal first example del ngilay mel ang ito malas min mruningi waseng gagi del first batch lamran del successfully breed ang makaral bolom ang ruling gagi del wild coral del mo grandparents mang talom suba continuation umusubi other Newcastle University el metal invite 30 el mera show el memsada really serabol melexel el clo el project 30 a center el será el ruqol belo yera center el other seguid del school el mleo ma seguid el tolerant coral makmlo invite Adriana ma HIDEOS el tige kuk semong tagi del el tokoira heat tolerant corals ma tokoira breathing lagi del Miranda el tira ko rawal bel tega leader tagi del seguid del project el lulme seguid del Miranda mong makara على breathe سيجد را ضرورة شوري در الأمل أخمر ذا beginning last year مالوبن إندرا 2023 إندرا 2022 إنه سبي هذا الإنفايتر تلمنا show مثلا لما يقول من بلا أذيانا ميل صادر تيجي ذا المسوب الواسي ما الأب جيب لهم مدنيا بلغة دلالة جيد المران ذا الجيب لهم سوبر بلاو إن أقمون غريني على تيال را وذو ذا يقالهم سوبر مال require أبطال وذو ثم أنيس المmga regagi del grant del apply gat regagi del researchers mong ok mong maringat alam mo malamol magagi del urior en sawa del mo mesel wase makarang apo tadingel wase saygi del DNA malubos saygi del bakar del langkal maran del heat tolerant makarang alam mo yuy el morangel next generation malubong makarangal mo yun del morangel ngaligel so with tagi del project I think no sabi el gorawal align ay gigi del baby ra a research may happen before man da kadil ngigi del me bodo ngel wase o ngagi del maran the heat tolerant nding with this project ang mo sabe edel ku continue sel kora mel vision til wase makarabo ngel mongal maran sabe el lo meel sabe el moyu dan ngagi del heat tolerant in ngagi traits malubang chin sa ringil moringel el next el maranda mang ay kadiri kalmal sabi ang sugi dara batokal tokora management malubang batokal tokora restoration efforts man sa edel mom ngel wasay wangaral taleta labo dos pe ringi asumung swadal you know helper tel referigi del mo o resilient mo sabi survive kaya the effects sa climate change malubong global warming tanam lo mention lo say masel next el time malborngia coral bleaching malubong borngia klawal dalala mong mobile lawa marande ay kaya at least ang ngaringi white tagi del community ra heat tolerant corals sabi el survivor tagi del stress heat stress events that could happen in the future and nga all unpredictable manggila del wal digi del motmok del kidara abekal time so ay kaya del omsub dili lomes blakar dali lamran from different habitat or different parts, different sites. Matadili ka lomes kaldali ladab, ikal ko na apret sa kaldali ladab, mga niya. Do you guys have like temperature loggers to kind of assess the average temperature of that specific area
in
you're
the
looking?
sites, yeah.
In the sites, okay. Mangwasay nga rin niya, gagidal temperature loggers, malubay gagidal mongwiwa agagidal kaldali ladab, rabe kal site, certir, man sabi ilomes mga masubay gagidal corals from different areas may mga isisiwit mo nga niya ability niya survive if ang kukmort gagidal tara habitat or kukmadigidal nga specific habitat yung sabi enable ringi mang keeper kal heat tolerant chinaringi mang gagida dire kal el baby la to or baby la talentingin talom subal tira omes el waseng makarado mes ay gagida different habitat akom do so baby la do you guys also look at the different depths or does it really affect the
I imagine it does,
okay.
But I'm not sure. Long story short,
okay.
In the reality, they're all going through the same tests and the same genetic sampling.
Okay.
So, regardless of where they're at, we know what traits they have inside.
So it's more on the average temperature of the site that
Average temperature and exactly the genetic makeup of the coral itself, more so than where we find it. Yeah.
Mangwaset ang chlorine alames ringi wasing wanga nga average temperature telta madire gal teletela la gigidel il DNA rang gigidel maranda mang sabel moyu day gigidel il blakar telel sabel survive makiyal telta pam. So telam suba like I mentioned before sabel help perigidel ako to ko na several long nga na sa kaya to coral restoration so dili kam lo explain ngil waseng what ko create that para telet la savings malubang reserve din ko kan o mastering ila ko to ko ramrand mga sesel bol so mga to ko mangutol happen na global mass bleaching event en ngaringi ang reserve was el Miranda rigid el resilient they may be affected and things of el survive ra kaya el maklol event so I hope this project will continue on and we're starting it on March of this year maybe we'll continue to update the folks about the project whenever we have interesting findings or some interesting stuff to share. But throughout within these 3 years, and we give mo malas mal the continual update ang mokuram la mo nga talang tingila relief al mrule gagid al lurior. So I know you didn't mention this, but are your sites here in Koror, or are they in different areas on the island, within the island?
To my knowledge, all of the corals they've been spawning have been collected in Koror.
In Koror, okay.
Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
Brilliant. Just one more thing to add. So once all the discoveries have been made and the project is finished, all of this knowledge will be available to global audiences of scientists, practitioners, and everything. And beyond that, creating the map and everything will be used to make a bleaching response plan for Palau. So the idea being, if there's a huge bleaching event, we already have some guidelines in place and we know the best ways to act.
So nga sa lamsub selbal mere karogul talang tangit talamsub al sel tagi dal rak eng mo makatmok lagi rogul babier may rogul information to be made publicly al sel bela madiri qalul other rogir diri qalwa say tagi dal sa danga gagi dal result ma gagi dal tele omsub selba almrek eng diri gal sodin mamrura bleaching response plan bok mo ngal to ko yung buton mangi a massive bleaching event ra al selbelaw eng korawang ra tele la poto me se kagi den brand yaktang sabe el korang aringi yaw ngil al darodar al teletal al poto me se ngil baseng makarang at asa agi dele tangan klen kora assess gigit the happen event and what can we do better or what can we look into as we expand the gigit the rukom subedra to heat tolerant corals. And then just to kind of add on to that, center ang aringi gigit the response plan or especially most researchers waya to ko typhoon sel so kung nga typhoon malubang tropical storm right after sale so kung makadakora omes ng kaman MCC yasente nga ngigel site tel top dal mo omes el mo assess ra damage malubang assess ra impact sa gidel tropical storm malubang typhoon. And that same process do sisiun mo to ko wa core bleaching event malubang so may ang koramal mo kumang taltamel yaka ule koramal aswara kaldera ladab ya adawa sayang koravi pelele kumranda ngaringi time sa edel mongi assess ya sumong mogire del marura kora response malubang report and then ang tob da klolom subol mo omesala say mlawang ara effect ra coral bleaching and then ngaringi a site ng internet el site ra nakalwid ang other NOAA el coral bleaching tracker sa ndagal official class sending wala ko coral bleaching tracker sa adala masaying wasay ngaringi gigi del back padangel na the instruments are team level kabul adal maskita real time data elo oti akal dalila da bra brul other rocky. So also just based on that website and we kind of receive like advisories on coral bleaching. Like they can like advise us that you guys are like coral bleaching warning or be on the lookout for it could happen in the next so or so. So yeah, there's a site I was talking about a site that I just the Coral Watch site.
Yeah.
Is that from NOAA?
No, Coral Watch.
Say gida dili ka dos peringil wa say sa elmar nga klote la coral bleaching event leng ikagid may kagid ul so ikagid ako rabek padagin la umsubel kita marura asente madirigal el ikagid ko klorura aquarium el los pe ikagid el baby umsubel namgot mok ra al selbelaw madirigal ikel belaw magrada apply el mo ra tal environmental kita ra Blue Belaw. So as we continue the work in the aquarium and at the center, we are very much open to anyone who's interested to know more about our work. And that is always at the aquarium.
Talking about corals.
Masukuma ko mga amralil May kami marangal ka school malubang kukti amralil will may center ang mal sa mi will ask al tilakay del staff malubang ka ask ka question or ka yagi makrola wal morning gel adal semong malubang sa PL el most modia or answer a question or ka el cook paste tayo science Michael amsubel kita miro center gid malubang cook di general el clam tangeri gid el kila lato ko era science magagid el back pating el environmental issues el related el morada igimal el happy lo ay selo se mal the open a center again ang mas May malubo ko mo ng 1 Mila Center 488-6950 leave your questions or ask to talk to Dan ila kanom dangan liyadan masumo ko mo ko la center gideng mil request directly mga dadoon nga tengwa maluben sa mi wal leave your questions and then we'll get back to you of course with the right person sa balhen sila karim so So we're closing the show. Dan, do you want to say something before we officially close the show?
Just thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be on here. Nice to talk about the work we're involved in. So appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Dan, for making time for us this morning. Akmadingin lasing albabi at time ang kora mo umiring nga kamsa daigang makora malas mal lolyu del mura atokor bela wat sabi at understand the ringi masumong koram la ringi aktilil kora amlo abiro atokor bela we mausubes di gagi dagel kora audio darura center and I think it's really interesting to know next al omira center ang sabi mi logger tilo saya mangwangaraygal el marando mo super ger wangara teletelen so agagid el baby will continue elang of course some of those help us make informed decision making hopefully help balwada wasing makarada continue el manage agagid el resources sergid and makasakl and how to become more resilient to climate change matokora global warming as we continue on move forward ling tal lulada mal di mal mongo da atlet la weather aul kadaro ko din mal aswaring mo kada ngar el tela el ninyo tamil sa dara soal marnya klot tela la kan so gin digital mal di iul la kan na mo club say ma kadari kal mal di ring asal le tal ulak ng tangat tegit of course ka dos pe aral mang digital multimal mongod kagit el predictions ma tele la weather ma environment so as we continue to move forward and gira del ko consider kagit el baby related mong makaral wal help pergid el overcome this challenges el toteng environment may magel ko unexpected events that could happen in the future so I guess without further ado we'll close the show this morning. Last reminders is just for students and teachers to submit your artworks by March 29 of this year. Again, our artworks for the 2025 Argentites calendar is Exploring Our Ocean. There is a detailed video and Sadarati Mergid available on our Facebook page, also posted on our YouTube channel at PICRC Palau. So mo mga YouTube and dire kal ngaring yabes el video el gidel tagid el Argentine madire kal ngaring yabes el video el game release highlight tagid rele la center gid era last year 2023 maso mangu korang ngaring atemi we ngara YouTube please visit us on YouTube ku mo cycle koram le major accomplishments gid for year 2023 and we continue to work with our partners makamil other community continue the orang asuliw ra partnership rigid a collaboration rigid regal no momri galjak matta egal diri gal mran me so komal thank you rokuy happy Tuesday, happy payday week umamakal lebam kargikla and I hope everyone stays dry kora tele laswal kora di ulal talsil sandig malda ka ngayon sa pelkuk mangod so again romar sulang alkuk mas ilabang gada ilal tutar visual eyes happy Tuesday, happy payday week.
Talingi, oh you, Taraura Hotel Balula, Limbalti, Gare, El Malat Karang Aramaka, Arangalage, Balwa, Mother Bay.